What's going on, guys? It is Pete Nova, and we are back for week 17. It is championship week for fantasy football. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you did watch our video last week, we had the Atlanta Falcons as our second favorite streamer on the week. They finished as a number one defense pending Monday Night Football with over 20 points in fantasy football. They probably won a lot of people their weeks, and if they did, let me know in the comment section, and as well as any other questions you may have about this week. But let's just jump right into my favorite defense to stream on the week. It's going to be the Dolphins taking on the Browns, just 15.7% rostered across fantasy formats. And like always for these streamer videos, we are looking for defenses 25% owned or less because we know people hoard, we know people hog defenses. And so we want to make sure these defenses are available in most leagues. We look here at this, it's a low point total of 40 points. We get an away team, so we don't get that home team plus a low point total, but we still get one of the two with the low total at 40 points. We do get a pretty heavy favorite here, though. On the road, 6.5 points is a very high total to be favored by, and the Dolphins look primed to string together another win here after beating the 49ers last week. But when you look deeper into this matchup, the Dolphins over the last 3 weeks are ranked sixth when it comes to sacks per game at 3.3 sacks per. And when you look at this Cleveland offense, Cleveland is giving up the most sacks per game over the last 3 weeks at 4.3. It's a really good matchup as a strength going up against a weakness. And that's what we like to see in fantasy football when you're streaming and picking up a defense. You're looking for sacks, turnovers, and low points. And then when you look at Cleveland, they've given up the most sacks per game at 4.2 sacks per game this season. And then, when we think about it, the Browns offense overall, forgetting about it being DTR last week, they've given up the most fantasy points to opposing defenses in fantasy this season at 11.6 per game. That's more than the Titans, who pretty much had this crown up until a few weeks ago, the entire season. The Browns, even with Jameis Winston, have just been a goldmine for opposing fantasy defenses. DTR last week, 2 interceptions, 157 yards, and 5 sacks. This team only scored 6 points against the Cincinnati Bengals defense. That's not very good. And the Dolphins defense is pretty solid. I will give them that. So I really like them. They are my favorite stream of the week. Then moving on to my second favorite stream. Yes, I know it is the Colts. They didn't start off so hot. They ended up getting an interception at the end of the game to give them a couple more points. They take on the New York Giants, though. We get a low point total here at 40.5. We do have an away team, but they're just 16% owned across fantasy formats. We get an away team that's favored by 8.5 points. That's a lot of points to be favored, and especially on the road. The Colts are fighting for a playoff spot. So are the Dolphins, and so is the next team that we're going to mention. But when you look here, the Giants have given up, haven't given up less than 11 points in the last 5 weeks to opposing defenses in fantasy. Their floor is 11 points in the last 5 weeks since Daniel Jones has been benched. And the Giants are fifth most in the NFL when it comes to sacks given up per game at 3.2. And over the last 3 weeks, they've given up the 12th most sacks per game. The Colts defense, they don't get after the quarterback a ton. They had a couple solid stretch there a few weeks ago, but 19th in the NFL for sacks per game. But when you look at this Giants team, they give up the 7th most points in fantasy over the last 4 weeks. And, it's just been a really good offense to play defenses against in fantasy football. When you look at the Colts and you look at the Giants, I don't have to show you this chart for you to know that this Giants offense is one of the worst in the NFL right now. They are very far from the next worst team. When you look at them in this chart, they're at the very bottom left of the screen. And, EPA wise, they're the worst in the NFL. Since Daniel Jones left, this offense was actually better with Daniel Jones. Whether it's Drew Lock, it's Tim Boyle, it's Tommy DeVito. Drew Lock's getting an MRI on his shoulder. We'll see what happens there. But either way, none of these quarterbacks have done well. So it doesn't matter who is back there. It's going to be a good thing for defenses in fantasy football. Then moving over to my last defense that I'm streaming this week, it's going to be the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Bears on Thursday Night Football. We get a low point total here at 43.5, but we do get an away team. Look, Seattle, just like the other two teams, Seattle is playing for a playoff spot. They're one game back behind the Rams. And Caleb Williams, hasn't really turned the ball over a ton. They did fumble. They fumbled a few times against the Lions defense, who's not very good. And if you watched my video last week, I had the Lions ranked as a top 7 unit, and they finished 7th on the week, I believe, in fantasy points. So, even against bad defenses, the Bears offense hasn't been great. When you look at Caleb Williams, he's the most sacked player in the NFL right now. He's been sacked 60 times. 60 times. We still have a few weeks left in the NFL. 60 times is just insane. But when you look at this offense, they're 7th worst in the NFL, the Chicago Bears, in EPA since week 10. And Seattle defensively has been the 6th best defense in EPA over the last few weeks since week 10. And is a solid defense going up against a bad offense, and they're playing for a playoff spot. I like the Seattle Seahawks here. They are not my favorite out of these three. They're my least favorite, but I still think they're a good play. But that's gonna do it for me, guys. If you have questions, drop them below. I might be doing a rankings video this week with the holidays and everything else. I'm trying to get as much content out as possible. If you do have questions, though, feel free to drop them into the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck in your matchups, and I will see you next time.